Good evening. It is Monday, October 9th, 2023, and I will now call to order the Wayzata Public Schools regular school board meeting. Will the acting clerk please call the roll?
Millen Sahoni,
Present.
Linda Cohen,
Here.
Heidi Cater,
Here.
Benita Lucky, absent. Cheryl Polzine, here. Sheila Pryor,
Here.
Sarah Johansson,
Here.
Dr. Anderson.
Here.
All right. Good evening and welcome, everyone. What a lovely sight to see our new space filled with parents and us anxiously all awaiting our students to come in and join us. So glad you were able to find us, and thank you for sharing your evening with us this evening. Our first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and addressed as an action item. The consent agenda items are listed in the materials, and the recommended action is to approve the agenda and the consent agenda items. Board colleagues and audience, I will also make a couple notes. Our audience opportunity to address the board this evening will come after a teaching and learning and superintendent report. It typically follows the student spotlight presentation, and so just know that that's been moved down just a little bit to account for some information sharing. Additionally, if you are interested in addressing the board at the audience opportunity to address the board in our new space, I think the sign-up sheets are out to the back on the table, so that's where you will find them. So board colleagues, again, the recommended action is to approve the agenda as noted and the consent agenda items. Is there a motion to that effect?
So move.
I second.
All right, it's been moved by Millen, second by Heidi. All in favor, or no, it's a roll call vote.
Benita Lucky is absent. Cheryl Polzine, yes. Millen Sahoni,
Yes.
Linda Cohen,
Yes.
Sheila Pryor,
Yes.
Heidi Cater,
Yes.
and Chair Johansson.
Yes. Fantastic. We have an agenda. So the first item on our agenda is reports from organizations, and so I'll invite Daniel, and you can join us at the table at front, and then I think the audience will be able to see you from the screens.
Hello. Perfect.
Hello.
All right. Hello. My name is Daniel Argento. I'm a senior at Wayzata High School. I'm the senior VP, and I'm here today to provide a monthly update to the school board. So the bulk of my updates are going to be regarding homecoming and the festivities. So two weekends ago, we had our homecoming dance. I'm proud to say that we broke record numbers with our ticket sales. We had 1,939 tickets sold. We also had a week ago from today on the Pep Fest, where we had a student versus staff basketball game. And I'm also happy to say that the students won that basketball game. At the homecoming football game this past Friday, we had the coronation, where Zach Robbins, a senior at Wayzata High School, won as homecoming majesty. At the block party just right before the homecoming football game, we had various food trucks, many different clubs ranging from Chemistry Club, National Honor Society, and we also had the school board in attendance, which we appreciated. And then this past Saturday, we had our Tackle Cancer Football Tournament, which is an annual fundraiser that we host. And again, it was record-breaking with 28 different teams in attendance. Last week for theater, Marvin's Room was performed on October 4th, 5th, and 7th, which was a success. And then looking forward into this week, I know many are excited to hear Chris Singleton speak at the high school on Wednesday, October 11th from 7 to 8 p.m. This is a free event, and I know, many are looking forward to hearing his speech, and I hope to see a great turnout at that event. Those are my updates at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, thank you for including the school board. We had fun at our football toss. The wind was a bit of a challenge, but nobody was bopped in the head by a falling football player, so it was good.
Yes.
So thanks so much, and we'll see you next month. Okay, and next on our agenda are recognitions, and so I will join Dr. Anderson at the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and all of those in attendance here this evening. Thank you for joining us. This is our very first recognitions program in this new space for our school board meetings. So you can feel like you're really part of a special group tonight. And we have to figure out all the logistics on how we do this. So if it feels a little bit clunky, just know that we're navigating this for the first time tonight. Our first recognition is for one of our 2 employees of the month, and I would like to invite Karen Schwendeman to please come forward and join our board chair. Karen, congratulations. I'm going to share a brief script that was put together on Karen's behalf and then give her an opportunity to share a few words. Would you like to do that? All right, that was a pretty profound yes there. She said sure, so that's good. I'd like to share the following on behalf of Karen. The Buildings and Grounds Department is pleased to recommend Karen Schwendeman as the Wayzata Public Schools Employee of the Month. The Employee of the Month should be someone who stands out amongst their peers and makes a difference. Karen Schwendeman has been that person. Karen has served as the administrative professional for the Buildings and Grounds Department since June of 2016. Her unsurpassed commitment to excellence has earned the respect and gratitude of her colleagues and district administrators and staff. Karen has a great can-do attitude that is very contagious for anyone who has worked with her. You often hear people ask, who helps keep everything running smoothly? From a district operations perspective, that is an easy answer. Karen does. She has a great understanding of what it takes to do a great job. That understanding, coupled with her attitude and willingness to go the extra mile, is why Karen Schwendeman is being honored as the October 2023 Employee of the Month. Karen, congratulations.
I just want to thank my team. I couldn't do my job without them. They make it super easy, so I just want to thank them.
Can you come up just a little bit so we don't get all that other stuff in the background? Perfect. Right there. On 3. Thanks. Congratulations. Thank you.
Well, that seemed to work, actually. So congratulations, Karen. We're very proud of you and appreciate all that you do. Our next Employee of the Month, and I would like to ask her to please join us up in front, is Deb Godejan. And Deb is being recognized as the Employee of the Month from Northwoods Elementary School. When people think of Deb Godejan, a smile immediately follows. Her energy, enthusiasm, and excitement for being a member of the Northwoods Wolfpack has been evident from day one. When applying for the music position, Northwoods Elementary was still being built. Deb composed a school song, which she sang in her interview. She has been leading the pack in school spirit and building community with her original composition since we opened in 2019. The commitment to building community at Northwoods continued the moment we opened our doors. Deb started with Voices of the Northwoods Choir for 4th and 5th graders, accepting anyone and everyone who wanted to join this inspiring group of singers. The choir not only performs in concerts throughout the year, they also represent Northwoods at Twins and Timberwolves sporting events. The choir is integral to honoring those who served or served in the military during our annual Veterans Day celebration. And they perform in the MLK Assembly, recognizing the vision of Martin Luther King Jr. each January. None of these community building events could happen without Deb. Deb uses positive energy and perseverance to find ways for all kids to thrive in her music classroom. Through a variety of activities that include singing, movement, and instrumentation, every skill and interest level is nurtured and celebrated. Be it ukuleles, xylophones, boom whackers, or recorders, Deb goes above and beyond to make music class accessible and fun for everyone. Beyond music, Deb shares unending kindness with our Northwoods pack. She checks in on colleagues with genuine care and concern, takes the lead to plan celebrations, recognizing staff in the building, writes and performs songs for special birthday, milestones, and retirements, and throws the best showers to celebrate upcoming weddings and little wolves added to our pack. Deb is a passionate teacher who is caring, compassionate, dedicated, and a joy to be around. She gives her all to her students each and every day. Northwoods is lucky to call her our colleague and friend. And here to sing for you now. Okay, I made that part up. She's not really going to do that. Well, she might. I don't know. I can't say for sure she won't. But I would like to invite Deb to please come to the podium and accept this wonderful honor. Congratulations.
I was going to speak from the heart, but I'm too nervous, so I wrote it down. I'm very at ease talking to children. I have for 41 years, but this tonight is a little unnerving for me, so thank you. I want to thank Dr. Anderson, the Wayzata School Board, and Jenny Berg for this recognition tonight. I'm humbled and honored to receive this award from you this evening. I am part of an amazing community at Northwoods, both in my specialist team as well as the staff and families at our school. I'm successful because of these incredible support that I receive from my colleagues and administration, both in my school and district music educators. I work with caring, hardworking, and kind people at Northwoods and couldn't imagine a better community in which to belong. Thank you to my family, my 2 sons, one here this evening and another who lives in Austria, their spouses, and my sister and brother-in-law who are currently watching the live stream tonight from San Francisco, California. Not only do I have an amazing school community, but a loving family that has always been my biggest supporters over my career for the last 41 years. In conclusion, I'd like to invite all of you to be part of our Northwoods community for our annual Veterans Day program, November 8th at 8 o'clock in the morning, as we honor the men and women of our armed forces, both at our school and here in the Wayzata community. Thank you again for this award. I'm truly grateful. Thank you.
Thanks again, Deb, and congratulations, and thanks for the cheering squad here in the front row tonight. For those of you who will be remaining here for a while, we will be treated to music here in a little bit, I believe, from the Northwoods Singers, so we'll have that to look forward to. Our final recognition for this evening, I believe, I want to double check that, is for those individuals who have announced their intent to retire since the last school board meeting, and we have 2 of those individuals tonight. I'm not sure that we have them in our presence. I don't believe we do, but the 2 individuals are Judy Heyman, the prepare professional at the high school for 9 years. I don't see Judy here with us. And Carolyn Sawina, Wayzata Cafes Central Middle School for 21 years. Is Carolyn here by chance? I don't see her. Well, they can't escape a round of applause, so we're going to give them a round. If you would join me in that, please. We thank them for their dedicated service to the school district. And again, I would like to thank our employees of the month, and thank you so much for all that you do and for helping to keep everything rolling forward in such good fashion. We greatly appreciate it. That concludes our recognition component of the meeting tonight. And again, thanks so much for being here with us.
Okay. And the next item on our agenda, as indicated, is our student spotlight presentation. And so Dana Miller, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, is coming up, and then they'll introduce our Northwoods friends.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Superintendent Anderson, members of the board. Again, tonight is one of our highlights, I think, of each month, and that's our school spotlight celebration. And with us tonight, we have Jenny Berg and her staff, and they're going to spend some time talking to us about the climate and culture of Northwoods, their why. And I think they have some very special guests with us to give us the voices of Northwoods. So with that, I'll turn it over to Principal Berg. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This is Jennifer Fuzzy, our Dean of Students, and my right-hand person, so I'm thankful that she's here tonight as well. We had the opportunity in 2019 to open Northwoods, our beautiful, beautiful school, and we brought our staff together and asked them the question, what kind of school do you want to be at? What kind of community do we really want to focus on for our students that are coming from so many different schools within the Wayzata Public Schools and so many communities in the surrounding area? And our group really talked about creating that positive, inclusive environment so all of our kids feel welcome each and every day that we come to Northwoods. And if you have the opportunity to visit our school, I think many people talk about our culture, our friendliness, our pack. We are the wolves, and we talk frequently about our pack, which involves perseverance, accountability, community, and kindness. And the word that we land on the most, I would say, is community. As Deb spoke about, she took quite a bit of our presentation tonight, Deb, so we should have collaborated a little bit more. But building that sense for our students that when they come in, that we see them, that we love them, that they are part of our community is the most important thing that we do every day. You'll see many of our families in the audience tonight. We're thrilled that are here and are with us each and every day. Their support has been amazing throughout our whole process. And there's a picture of our beautiful school.
And this is our why that Jenny was just referencing related to our pack. And the next slide shows in year 2, we built upon our why with a Wordle. And when you look at the Wordle, hopefully it'll come up at some point, the word that really stands out most is community, relationships, compassion, kindness, which is what we're framing everything that we do on. So it really focuses on that sense of belonging that we're trying to achieve with our students and between our students and our staff. And it's foundational in that concept of community. So it's how we lead, it's how we live, and it's how we strive each day. So the next slide is we talk to kids every day when you belong here. We see them off the bus when they get out of their cars, even tonight. They're excited to be a part of our pack and who we are. So we wanted to highlight our Voices of the North.
Yep. I think our Voices of the North Choir is a perfect example of that community that we're building at Northwoods. Mrs. Godejan has done a beautiful job, whether we were in the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, or after the pandemic, giving our students an opportunity to have a real life experience, to be part of a team, to do something that they could be proud of, things that we did as children. I think that's one thing I really love about Northwoods is that our kids are really doers. They just don't think about doing things. They actually do a lot of things. They like to get their hands dirty. They like to get their voices heard. And tonight you'll have the opportunity to hear our choir sing 2 songs. The first one is one of the songs they're going to be singing at our event in November that we'd love to have you come. As you may or may not know, we are the 3rd largest school in the district. Most days we teeter with Greenwood. So we are very large. The first time we had our Veterans Day ceremony, our celebration, we could easily fit everyone in our gym, but now I think we'll have some overflow seating in the cafeteria to make sure you'll be comfortable. But the students really take so much pride in this event. We have a staff member who is a member of the Navy. We have the Hamel VFW coming, which will bring tears to anyone's eyes. These gentlemen and women are so phenomenal and so grateful that they are also part of our community. So I hope you can be part of that as well. It's at 8:05 in the morning, I believe.
8:05.
8:05. And then the second song we'll be singing is the song Deb famously sung at her interview, which is our rouser. It's hard not to hire someone that sings a song about your school that hasn't quite been built yet. So that was a phenomenal moment in my career as well. So with no further ado, Our first Employee of the Month will be walking in our students, and I hope you enjoy their performance.
This is my 5th grade portion of the choir because I have 115 in choir this year. So we brought just 5th grade. They sang this song last year and they were excited that they got to come tonight. So we're going to open up with Fly the Flag of Freedom.
That was fantastic. Thank you, students, on your way out the door. Okay. And who can follow that? On that note, I think our student spotlight presentation is concluded. As long as there are no comments or questions from the board. Oh, yep.
I have one thing to say. I'm really excited to come on the 8th. I will be there. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you also, parents, for joining us this evening. Thanks to all of our guests. We're so glad you are here. And we look forward to hearing more from the Northwoods Pack. And you can stay too. Everyone is welcome to stay. We have very exciting things on the agenda. And just a note from our agenda, again, I gave this at the beginning, it's just as we're making the transition. Following the student spotlight presentation, we'll move on to administrative reports and recommendations, which includes a report from our teaching and learning regarding our middle school schedule recommendation overview, with a couple other items from the superintendent, and then we will move on to the audience opportunity to address the board before we do our finance and operations report. So, to that end, I will welcome Dana Miller back to our table to share, to begin and kick off, I think, what will be a presentation regarding the middle school schedule recommendation overview.
I think I'll give the rest of the team a time to celebrate out there and come on in. In the meantime, I am going to distribute the executive summary that was from back in January just to refresh everybody's mind a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
So good evening, Madam Chair, Superintendent Anderson, members of the board. It's my pleasure to be here tonight with the middle school leadership team and to do a presentation or a deeper little dive on our middle school review process and the phases that we have gone through thus far and where we are heading with that next. I want to welcome again Austin Tollerson from Teaching and Learning, who has been helping shepherd this work, along with our principals and assistant principals from Central Middle School West, and Middle School East as well. Tonight in this review process, we're going to quickly review the 4 phases that we have put into place as part of the middle school review, and this was part of our presentation back in January of 2022 or 2023 as well. That 4-phase review, and Amy, if you want to advance for me, thank you. That 4-phase review was to envision and assess, plan and develop, implement, and evaluate and adjust. And if those look familiar to you, that's part of our curriculum review process and was chosen as part of our middle school review as well. As we go forward tonight, all the information that we're sharing is on our middle school review website, which has been part of our website since we began about 2 years ago on the middle school review, and then is also part of that, parts of it are part of the review executive summary that I handed to you tonight that is also on our website. Again, phase 1 is the envision and assess, and that's what we would have been doing the last year and a half, and we'll speak to that. Phase 2 is plan and develop, and in that phase, stakeholders and staff committees study our proposals that were brought forth and build up on them, the recommendations, determine what is ultimately the best for Wayzata Public Schools. The timelines in phase 2 are to be driven by various factors such as our budget, staffing, facility, and student experiences. So none of these phases are written in stone. They're very dependent and occur at different times throughout the years. Phase 3 then is implementation. Timelines again adjusted and incremental implementation occurs. So not everything will happen at once for us. And then phase 4 is that evaluate and adjust. So just like every teacher in their classroom, part of our responsibility is to monitor, adjust, see how things are going, and make adaptations and changes as it occurs. So we do believe that the schedule that we're going to be looking at tonight is one that will serve our district for a very long time to come. Again, going back to that phase 1, envision and assess, kind of taking a little bit of a walk from where we've come. In the fall of 2021, Teaching and Learning was commissioned to conduct a thorough middle school review. And this kind of came from a variety of factors, one being the growth occurring in the district and the wonderment and question of the day that a fourth middle school is needed. Also, we were just coming out of the pandemic and wondering about where our learning was and where we would be picking off and letting up, and if there's anything that needed to change as a result. Also, we were taking a look at new state requirements and standards that we needed to fit into our curriculum. And also, as Paul Paetzel, our historian at the time, told us, it had been some 20 plus years since we had done a thorough review, and it was time to take a look at that. So we partnered on that work and created the design team, which was, again, members of the middle school leadership team, along with myself, Equity Inclusion Director Solveig Haraday, and our WEA President Corey Knutson. During that time then, we really spent a lot of time grounding ourselves. We wanted to take time to understand what is it that we want that middle school experience to be for a Wayzata student, and what is, if it was a first class as we want to have, and we could have it all, what would that look like? So we really grounded ourselves in the work of the strategic plan, our equity commitment, and then what's on the screen there is the successful school from This We Believe, which are the recommendations coming out of the National Middle School Association. We also took a good look, deep dive into visible learning by John Hattie, which you've heard us talk about before, and also tons of resources about how to best use time and how to use that time that is appropriate for the developmental age of a middle school student. We spent a lot of time brainstorming and thinking and researching, and from there we came up with the 9 project teams you see below. And then in fall of 2022, it was time to bring that work to the middle school staffs, and we kicked off a middle school review presentation with all 3 middle schools together. And at that time also asked that our staff participate with us in the middle school project teams. So all staff had an opportunity to sign up for those at that time. And then we came together and looked at the staff and assigned folks to those 9 project teams. And then throughout the summer, spring and summer of 2022, those project teams came together and really did the same kind of iterative work that we had done as a design team, looking at best practice research of their specific areas, in some cases going out and visiting schools, just really diving in and saying, in our area, so what we're going to talk about largely tonight in the schedule area, what are best practices out there for the middle school student and what fits with the priorities that we had set as a middle school review team on what we want the Wayzata middle school student experience to be. And then they created their own set of priorities on what a schedule would need if we were to hit all those marks. So that work continued through that spring and summer. During the summer, also that spring and then into the summer, we had sent out surveys to parents, staff, and students. Some of the buildings also conducted small groups with students, kind of focus groups to get additional information. And they brought all that together to create recommendations in all 9 of those areas. From there, we returned to the project teams, returned to the design team, and we created an executive summary. So out on our website, you'll see a really long review summary that has a lot of verbiage in it. So if you really want to dive in deep to each one of those committee members' findings, recommendations, and research, it's out there on the website. But also that executive summary that I gave to you again tonight was what we came to the board in January of 2023 and presented. And that really was then the end of that envisioning and assessing phase. So then we were planning to move into stage 2, which is plan and develop, which would have initially began probably this past spring. But this is also the time that, as you all well know, that we were also facing cost containment, and some decisions had to be made around how to move forward to hit our marks when it comes to the budget. And so that's really when the middle school review process and the cost containment intersected, if you will. And those 2 things came together, and one of the areas that was asked of the middle school administration is, could you look to see if we could find more efficiencies in our middle school schedule? Wayzata is running one of the most expensive middle school models that we can run with a very pure teaming model. And so the question was, is there a more efficient way that we could run and still guarantee that world-class education that we've come to expect in Wayzata, and that would hit all those scheduling marks? Because the design team and the project teams had already been working together, we were a little bit ahead of that process because we had already done all that background research and so forth. So at that time, then it did accelerate our timeline, and rather than maybe looking at a full year to really dive in with staff, we were looking at needing to get going on that because I know it's hard to believe in October, but we very much are already thinking next year and living into that next year and needing to make some decisions as we go forth already with course proposals and staffing and scheduling and registration and all that fun stuff. So I know Mr. Reed was already meeting and greeting those Northwood fifth graders because it's not long before they enter his door. So that's really part of our work that we put forward. And so with that then, this summer when the leadership team came back together, middle school leaders, it really was to design a framework for a schedule that could hit all of our markers, hit cost containment, bring that forward to you, and then be able to get together again with staff to break down kind of the details of it. So I think I've heard in some of our meetings talk about we framed the house, and now what is it going to look like as we work with staff to put up the drywall and so forth. So with that, a little walk down memory lane, I'm going to turn it over to the middle school principals, I believe Xavier Reed, to really drill down into how we've arrived at that schedule framework that we're at, and then we'll be available for questions as well. Thank you.
Good evening. So just as Dana was saying, you know, there were some components that we felt like were really important that we wanted to continue to have a part of our middle school schedule. That became really clear, you know, out of the focus groups, out of the surveys, out of the project teams, and some of those components that were really important. Number one was the teaming. And so when we talk about teaming in Wayzata, we're talking about the way that we're able to make you know, a big experience going from elementary school to middle school into a smaller experience for students. And so, for instance, our students currently are on teams of students that are about 100 to 115 students per team. That shrinks down that experience. For my school, for instance, with 500 students in a grade level, that experience gets shrunk down to about 120. And so that is something that was important to staff. It was important to students. It was important to families when we did those surveys and those conversations and had that. The other component of teaming that was also important was that staff had that common time during the day to collaborate around those students, to be able to you know, to be able to prioritize what needs were needing to be met, how they were going to approach that, communicate, and that's both with their grade level color team, and that's with their PLC team as well. Another component that was really important throughout the process as well was being able to keep middle school exploratory. So when you go from elementary to middle school, you have more options to be able to try different classes, try different experiences. Even outside of the school day, we have different clubs and sports and activities. And so in the spirit of exploratory, we wanted to create more opportunities for that and wanted students to be able to experience that. We also were made aware that we needed to, you know, become in compliance with the new arts curriculum that MDE, the arts curriculum requirements that MDE had handed down. And so to do that, we would need to make some adjustments there as well. Another component that was important was being able to have health be a standalone class in at least one grade level. And so that was something that was communicated throughout the process, which would be a shift for us because right now, Phi Ed and health is together currently. And then being able to have some protected time to be able to support the needs of our different students that we have in the building. That when you look at, you know, what that potentially would be for us, that would be during my time, it would be during potentially a block or a half block that students would receive that support in. And then last but not least is being able to continue on with having a strong advisory program in our schedule. And then also a my time. And so advisory has been in our schedule for quite some time now. It is something that our teachers, our students, our families hold to a high regard. And then with my time, which is a newer concept, but allows for so much flexibility to meet those different needs of our students during the day. And so with having both of those daily at a minimum of 20 minutes, those were all 6 components that we considered through while putting together the schedule.
All right, and I'm going to speak to a little bit of a comparison chart. If you were to go to Home Depot and try to sort through all the different products they have, there's some comparisons so you kind of know what you're getting into. And so as we looked at the comparisons between the different middle school models, a lot of it is just, we took the recommendation that the project team came forward with and kind of said, okay, what does that allow us to hit? Like we mentioned, teaming is an important part of the middle school program, so making sure that could get in. Our current model is really the only model that allows us to continue to do that. If we moved to a 5 out of 6 period day or a 6 out of 7 period day, which would meet our cost containment guidelines, we would not be able to have teaming. Teachers would have a personal prep time built in, but any teaming for PLCs, grade level work, core and color team work would have to be done outside of the student contact day in the morning, and it does get much more difficult to pull that off if that's the case. PLC time is in that same boat as well. That chunk of time during the student contact day that we have built in with the schedule would not be there in our other options if we were doing a 5 out of 6 model or a 6 out of 7 model. If you look at the next slide, as we look at the art requirements, that's a non-negotiable. We have to get those art requirements in, and we couldn't do that in our current model without drastically changing the current encore and elective options that we have, because we have to get more into that same amount of space. In terms of if we went to for example, a 6 out of 7 schedule, you could fit that in, but again, we lose the benefits of teaming. Plus, teachers are assessing more students at that point. They're having 6 classes and probably 180 students that they're giving feedback to and assessing. So that's one other piece. The standalone health class, again, in our current 5 out of 6 model, there isn't a way to fit that in with more art requirements without drastically changing the current encore offerings that we have. And again, feedback from our students and from our staff is that if anything, we want to increase those encore and elective opportunities and give students more voice and choice. We don't want to be taking away things that currently make our program strong. We want to be adding to and building upon those. The advisory piece, if we're looking at a 6 out of 7 model, for example, and same with my time, it gets pretty tight because the 6 out of 7, we might be looking at, between 42 and 44 minutes per class period. So we're losing instructional minutes in all of our core content areas. And it really gets tricky and tight if we can pull off advisory in my time, which those were strong recommendations of our project teams that they wanted daily advisory for 20 minutes. They wanted daily my time for 30 to 35 minutes. So those are some pieces as we looked to work through these. The other thing I mentioned on the next slide is just that idea of elective options, having multi-grade classes potentially. In terms of the elective options, again, our students strongly stated in their survey, both in written surveys, but also just when we sat down with groups of students and say, hey, tell us about your middle school experience. What do you want more of? They want more hands-on project-based classes. They want those elective options. And frankly, as a building, when I first came into my role, that was one of the things my Encore staff told me right away is we think we can build upon the work we're doing, and we think we're missing out on something right now with the current schedule model. This alternate block schedule we'd be moving to would provide a lot of those Encore and elective opportunities that we currently don't have available to us. The idea of multi-grade elective and specialized classes, that helps in a number of ways, and we'd be strategic in how we group those students, but it might allow us for 7th and 8th grade, maybe there's an elective under the art area because we have to offer at least one elective in the arts area in addition to 2 required. If we have a pottery class, for example, and I'm just throwing out something that 17 8th graders said they would do and were interested in, and 13 7th graders, we could combine those grade levels into one 30-student pottery class. It also could help with specialized services. If students are receiving support on their IP for service minutes around maybe social emotional learning, a case manager could strategically place students together during that time and be very efficient with that time and have students from a couple different grade levels potentially during that time, which is something we currently can't do because all of our schedule with the core classes being anywhere between 54 and 60 minutes, but depending upon the building, and the encore class being between 40 and 44, it makes the schedule off all day long, so we aren't able to combine those classes and provide those specialized services in a really effective and efficient manner. The other piece is efficiency, and some people have wondered, okay, what does, in my building, I've had the question, what does efficiency mean? And that really means like having our teaching staff teaching a higher percentage of the day and making the most out of that class time. Like our current model is a very expensive model because we're not being super efficient with that teacher day. So this alternative block schedule increases that efficiency of it without going, for example, like the 6 out of 7 is a more efficient model, but it doesn't meet our other needs. So for us, as we got the recommendations of the project team, which we thought were very strong recommendations and put a lot of thought into that, and then started to go through the other pieces we had, this alternative block model really emerged as a very, very popular option with that project team, and as something that our design team felt like would be a strong schedule to move forward with because of all these different pieces, including the flexibility. It also, as we've gone through this, any schedule has pieces that are going to leave some groups, wondering, okay, this doesn't seem quite right. I used to have more instructional minutes, or I'd love to see my kids every day in this way. One thing I like about this is there's room to adjust over time if we need to. And as we compared to other districts, because that was one thing that our project team did a lot of, is looking at our comparable districts. So looking at Edina and Minnetonka and seeing what Eden Prairie is doing. So Edina right now has an alternating block schedule of 76 minutes for a block, and then they have 36-minute half block options. So we definitely would have more instructional minutes in those blocks than Edina does. Eden Prairie has 45-minute class periods. They're more on the 7-period type day, so they've got 45 minutes. So it's an interesting thing to look at, that even with a shift, we stand pretty well in comparison to our neighboring districts that parents and community members often compare us to. So that's my piece. I'm going to turn it over to Meg to talk about the next pieces.
Good evening. We, after Ryan spoke about that, could you go back to the last slide? I just want to highlight, so in the yellow on the chart are all the different scheduling options that when we came together as an administrative team, we were really looking carefully at and reviewing to ensure, as Ryan said, when we look at all the different elements that were brought forward through the middle school program review, how the different scheduling options hit those for us, and which of the schedules, which the modified block is what we're recommending, we feel like hits all of those elements in the best way possible as we move forward. There's a lot of change with that for our staff. And I know we've all been supporting our staff as we navigate these conversations and look to, as Dana said, this is an accelerated timeline for us. And so we've been navigating what that means, because for many years, as Dana spoke, we've been running the same schedule. And so I will say that there's many staff who are looking forward to this and many staff who are very nervous and not sure what this brings. And so we've been navigating those conversations. Going into the next slide goes into the important next steps. Because we are accelerating the timeline, we have to be incredibly intentional on how we're making sure staff input is brought into the process, because that was accelerated. So we were hoping for maybe this year having more time to be with staff to really design and implement, and due to our acceleration to implement the schedule related to cost containment for next year, that process is feeling a little faster than what we were expecting. So we're really looking carefully into parent communication to ensure that our parents are really aware of the steps that have been taken and what to expect ongoing. So really communicating our modified block recommendation schedule, but then also when will they as parents be receiving next information, which will really be during course selection when their student gets to select courses for the upcoming year. This morning, we communicated to staff in our building the opportunity for the first cross-building committee, or Project Team 2.0 is what we're calling it. And we really need to dive in and look at the course structure within the modified block. There has been, I would say, a lot of question around our social studies and science and how we're offering that, because that does feel in the samples we've looked at so far to be potentially the most impacted from a staff perspective. So it's really important that we are bringing teachers and from lots of different perspectives into the space with us to really look deeply at how we're offering our core courses and how that might look different from 6th, 7th to 8th grade. Within the block schedule, we've also been receiving some input around what does this look like in a block for a 6th grade student compared to a 7th or 8th grade. And when you see it come alive, you see that it's a change in instruction and how you use that time, so that you're really creating different opportunities for students to engage deeply and critically into learning. But that does take a different approach with instructional design. And so we are looking for another cross-building committee to look really deeply into block teaching strategies. So we'll have one team looking at course structure. How are we offering encore, core? What are the details of what we would require a student to take during the middle school experience? And really diving into that with a lot of staff input. Also looking at block teaching strategies. And then also looking at my time and advisory. And so we'll have multiple project teams coming forward in the areas where we feel we need to have a lot more time to design before implementation next year. We have talked about school visits, offering expanded opportunity for staff who haven't had that opportunity to be able to visit other schools who are running a modified block, to be able to see it come to life. And there's a lot of excitement around that. We also have some work to do in new course proposals. As we talked about, I pulled together 90 students today in a student leadership meeting. It was very fun. And I asked them, how might we improve your experience at East Middle School? And across every grade, which brought this forward to me again, the number one area that came up was, we want more choices in what we take in our classes. So students are really ready for this. They want their voice heard. And so I've been thinking today after meeting with them, how do we ensure that students are at the table in that conversation as well? And so looking at how will that process look as far as what courses we will be offering next year, what will that process look like to ensure come February when students select courses that they're well informed at the options that are in front of them. And then with that comes professional development. We are living in this year, but really starting to plan already for next year to ensure our staff feel ready and prepared to implement this schedule well. And then lastly, and also very important, we'll be facing some staffing decisions, which is also something that creates anticipation and anxiety for our staff as we approach cost containment. And so really looking carefully at the communication and timelines, which is something I know our staff have brought forward to make sure that we're transparent and honest through that process as we continue to navigate not only the cost containment, but enrollment changes that are coming forward for next year. Lastly, so we're looking at implementation next fall. So all that work will help us be well prepared for the fall. And then as I spoke to, looking to pull together a distributed leadership team across teachers, and various staff in our building to ensure that we're really looking at these project areas that are moving forward from the middle school program review. Lastly are there any questions that we can answer? Would you like to join me up here?
Thank you so much for the review. I feel like every time I hear it, I learn something new. So thank you. I'm sure my board colleagues, Linda.
First of all, thank you for all the hard work. It's really fascinating to see what you'll, thank you. Thank you for all the hard work, and it will be really interesting to see what the final product looks like. One specific question I have is, you mentioned both a color team and a PLC team. Can you tell me the difference between those, and would each individual teacher be at both of those team meetings and plus a prep meeting? So a little explanation on that.
Yeah, so our color grade level teams, the color is just the way that we identify each team in the building. But we have our core teachers on those teams currently. That's our math, our language arts, our science and social studies teachers. So for instance, at all of our schools, we have a sixth grade gold team or a sixth grade blue team, and that's going to be your team. That team is going to collaborate more so around the students that are on their team that they teach, your PLC, and then that collaboration is going to be more around content and around what they're teaching and things like that. And so there's just different focuses for each of the groups. Both of those teaming, that common time that they have is embedded in the school day currently, and so that is something that with this new schedule we would be looking to honor as well.
Right. So it's one period which can either be used as a PLC or as a talking about the students specifically and so on.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add one of the elements in this schedule that that we, as we were comparing, moving to teachers teaching 6 out of 7 as an example. One model we looked at would reduce that time to about 42 to 45 minutes per day. And so it would be more challenging to get all of those components during their planning time, as far as their prep, meeting with their professional learning community, and meeting with the same teachers that teach the students that they get the opportunity to be with each day. Now, moving to this model is going to give us the same time, but potentially a different structure. So we're committing to teaming, and I know my building's talked about, if we get to the point with scheduling that we have to prioritize one type of teaming during the day over another, we've been having conversation, would it be professional learning community or the color team? And that will depend on kind of where the schedule blocks all fall. And so some might have to happen before school, or some might have to happen during the embedded time during the day. We'll have to look at prioritizing potentially one or the other, or hopefully being able to do both during that time.
Milland.
Okay, I don't know who of you five can answer this question, but anyone can do that. One of the slides, the heading was the intersection of cost containment and middle school program. Notoriously, I don't know a lot about block schedules. I've done some studies. I've talked to Dana and Nate last week. Block schedules are notoriously more expensive, and we have seen from the slides that the efficiency is less as well. So with that in mind, help me understand what this will do to the costs, specifically in terms of cost containment.
I can speak to that a little bit here, and Austin, maybe you can jump in because you guys have done that. So if you look at our current schedule and efficiency rates, we're at right under that 70%. So when we go and we look at an alternating block, we're at either block, either an alternating block or a block, we get to 75%, which means that we're getting our teacher time in front of students. We're increasing the availability of that time and therefore needing a few less teachers. Yes, it is true that if you were to go to a 7-period day, thank you, Amy. If you were to go to a 7-period day where teachers teach 6 of 7, or you were to go to a 6-period day where teachers teach 5 of 6, you would save more money. You would be at that 83 to 86% efficient. But if you look at kind of going through the green check marks on our Best Buy check, if you will, you'll notice that some of those other key critical components that the scheduling project team, as well as the design team, identified as critical components of a middle school, such as that high quality advisory time, that teaming that Linda was asking at, are not possible on either a 5 of 6 or a 6 of 7. So when you look at some of our neighboring districts that are running a schedule like that, it is more efficient. It runs much more like what you would refer to as a junior high model, where our class periods are much shorter, so we also lose significant instructional time on those as well. So while an alternating block is not as cost efficient as a 5 of 6 or 6 of 7, it does hit our marks that we were asked to hit and maintains the high quality middle school experience for both our students and teachers that we want to have.
Compromises, and we are compromising with the better quality of education for students, right?
And I think I will add that when we came out of even before cost containment as the middle school schedule team, and then a lot of those project teams intersect with each other or kind of dance with each other, if you will. Courses of study requires the schedule and advisory dependent. So schedule is kind of the frame of that house. That was the schedule, that alternating block that the schedule review committee recommended, that block or an alternating block. So that was the recommendation prior to any cost containment. Really where the cost containment piece came in is that it has kind of sped us up a little bit in the work that we need to do. Not so fast that we don't believe we can deliver a high quality experience. We just knew that we'd have to do a little bit more work this fall than we had initially planned for.
Dr. Flansburgh.
Thank you, Dr. Sahoni, too. As we look at part of the scheduling complexity, it's also important to recognize we staff on ratios. So when you think about class sizes across the entire board, at the elementary level, they're true ratios. So if you were to say we're trying to staff at 23 students per classroom on an average, that's the ratio we go in 23 students to one teacher. At the middle school, the ratio shifts upwards, but at the current schedule, the way it's done as it is, we subsidize that to be able to keep the teaming model in place. So in some of the cost containments, in some ways, our middle school model has actually been protected a little bit with the class sizes because we have had to subsidize to ensure that that teaming remains in place as well. So when you're looking at that cost efficiency, it's eliminating the subsidization, how we subsidize those buildings to ensure that the staffing is there.
Sheila.
Yes, I have a question in the context of cost containment and how recently, the middle school music program was impacted by that, and also in the context of the MDE requirements for certain art classes. How do you think this will impact the music program?
I think one exciting piece is bringing those people into the conversation. So that's, as we talk about our ongoing work, we met with staff this morning and talked about we're going to have that project team to look at course structures. And so that group of people is going to have a chance to give their input on how this plays out for their program, and also have a chance to think about if they would like to propose any elective options. But that's where we're going to have that teacher voice come back into this process right now and see what ideas they have within the structure for their program.
I have a second question as well. This is kind of following Milland and what Nate said about the efficiencies, and I understand. And this is not to minimize what the teachers will have, staffing cuts, or what the teachers will have to do to, more training and all the changes. But in terms of class sizes, how do you think this new schedule will affect class sizes?
Can answer that. We'll still be staffed at the same allocation that we are currently, and so there is a chance whenever you offer new courses that decisions need to be made as far as how low are we willing to run this course and what that enrollment will be, and we'll have those decisions in front of us. Wherever in your schedule you go lower, something else goes higher because we're working within the same bank. And so we'll have to have those decisions on what courses we're willing to run and what that looks like. Students will have to make different choices, like this is my first choice, second choice, and we'll try to fulfill those as best as we can. But there's always a possibility in this schedule that's, like I said, something will go high when something goes low, but we're still allocated at the same staffing. So I would not anticipate that the course sizes would look that different than now.
So despite staffing cuts, because of the increased efficiency, it's not going to have a drastic effect on class size. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Heidi.
I have a couple of questions. So, Meg, I want to go back to what you were talking about when you were saying that for 6th and 7th and 8th grade, those blocks might play out differently. What are some of the things, what are some of the advantages that you see or that your colleagues see in the block schedule?
I can speak to that first. I think so currently our schedule is very inflexible. We offer the same periods for the same time. And actually, speaking to the music a little bit, our schedule, coming in with new eyes, at least to the schedule, is fairly out of balance when it comes to what is considered a core and encore experience. All classes are academic and instructional time for students. And right now, our schedule, I would say, is very out of balance with having pretty little space for our encore offerings, which is part of the initiation of a need for a schedule change, because if just even looking at the MDE art requirements, we just don't have space to offer increased choices within our current schedule. But a block model, so I'm really excited for the team to come together to look at now within this, how do we want to structure our courses? Because there's a lot of opportunity to consider how we run classes on an A to a B day, so every other day, daily. There's a block or a half block. And so there's a lot of opportunities within there. Are we going to run a class for a term or a semester? There's just a lot more flexibility that this offers so that our teachers and staff can make those decisions that we believe are in the best interest of our students. Where in comparison to our current schedule, those decisions are made. It's the same schedule, and there's little flexibility. So that's what I would speak to.
Can I?
So having had the opportunity to be both an assistant principal and a principal when we went from a 7-period day to a modified block schedule, and some of the same concerns I'm hearing we had around what does that look like to a middle school student, and you think about the energy that we so much love around them and what does that mean. And we really found that block schedule actually served them better because there's more time to build in those hands-on learning experiences that deepen the learning, that when you're on a 45, 50-minute pace, you're just having to snap through, and we don't want our students at any level sitting in their desk and just absorbing. Like, learning is active, and so it gives that opportunity. It gives that opportunity for small space, pull-out groupings, going out and working with other students teaching students. There's just a plethora. So when we're really looking at some of our teaching protocols, we're going to have some professional development to do around that. But from my experience as a middle school principal in that space working with teachers, and then ironically, when we had to go away from that, that was what our teachers were not wanting to leave the most. If I have a science experiment, I can actually get it all in. If I have a math test and I have students who need a little more time, I have that. They don't feel rushed, right? I can give that extra boost of help. So it just really opens the doors for a much deeper and richer experience, which is why I'm going to guess our high school has been at that for as long as they have as well.
Yeah, I would add, this is part of our conversations around how do we keep growing professionally, is if I'm a teacher and I just okay, I had 2 lessons, in these periods, and I'm just going to combine it into this one block lesson, it's not going to go very effectively. So it's learning how to utilize that time and structure that time differently than maybe you previously have. But again, in my experience, having been in buildings that taught both on a schedule that's more in that 45, 50-minute range versus the block, once people have taught in the block at the middle level, they don't want to go back from it because of all the flexibility within that time and different pathways they can offer. So they might do some direct instruction for a part of it, but then they might be pulling in kids that they had, a recent quiz that needs some extra support on that quiz. And they might have another group collaborating and working on a project. All of your classes where they're doing, science experiments, facts baking, tech ed, all of those want that extra time to have those opportunities to dive into it and not have to be kind of cut off and stop again. So you actually end up you utilize your time more effectively because you're not taking the equipment out, collecting it, all that you do day after day, unless you have a longer chunk of time with it.
Add into another piece that might be a little bit more concrete to answer your question around how it could look different from 6th grade to 8th grade. It's come up, that this schedule would potentially decrease our time in science and social studies. And so one of the myths that's out there is that it would cut it in half. It wouldn't cut it in half. When you look at percentages and how much time it would reduce by about 18%. There's an opportunity potentially, and this will come to our project teams to be able to talk about, but for there to be, instead of a boost of language arts and math in 8th grade, it could be a boost of science or social studies in 8th grade. And that would then bring it down to 9%. And so that would be a different experience for 8th graders versus 6th graders. And I would argue that, at the middle school level for years, with the schedule that we've been in, it's been a very similar experience for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. At the elementary level, I don't know if it's the same experience for kindergartners and 5th graders. I don't know if that's the same experience for 9th graders and 12th graders. But at the middle level, it's been very similar. This would then now provide a different experience for students based off of what grade they're in.
And lastly, not to belabor, but we also think it's a nice transition from 5th grade and a nice transition into high school. So our middle level has to quickly bring them from elementary and get them ready for high school. And if you think about it, I was in a couple 5th grade classrooms today. They're on the move. They're in that space for pretty much a long chunk of time, but they're on the move. And our elementary colleagues are experts at knowing how to chunk up that time. And so that will be some lessons that our middle level teachers, and I would argue our high school level teachers as well, can learn from on how to chunk up that time and so that you can dive deeply. So Ryan hit it on the head. Often what I've seen in my experiences too is once teachers get used to that block, they never want to leave it again.
I have one more question, and it's around having different aged kids in the same class. So do you have any examples where you have seen it work well? Can you speak to that a bit?
So one example, and this isn't even on the table for us yet, but just an example of across all 3 grades is some schools do a looping advisory where they've got 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. And for example, they might have, if they've got 25 students in their advisory, 8 might be 8th graders, and as they graduate out, we bring in 8 new 6th graders, and it really provides an amazing leadership opportunity for the 8th grade students, kind of mentoring and helping those 6th grade incoming students. So that's one example of it. Another example, I've been at quite a few schools, whether it's a Phy-Ed elective, an art elective, or anything like that, it's 7th and 8th grade students that both have access to that. It could be a Spanish class where maybe a student didn't take Spanish one year, and there's a chance for an on-ramp get into our Spanish programming, having a multi-grade level class. So those are just some examples I've seen be successful and are more flexible than we currently have.
One of the things we've been talking about as well is our math programming, 612. And a lot of our students at the high school do what we call doubling up. So they double up their freshman year to get that intermediate algebra and that geometry in. And in the systems where I've been used to, at times we will take our high-level math students or our kids who need acceleration, and we can put our 7th graders who are ready for, let's say, intermediate algebra or geometry, we can put those in with those 8th grade learners, because again, we have students who are learning at a higher level, and our middle school schedule doesn't really allow for much of that. So this schedule, while we believe, will really hold up to the test of time, will also really allow us to meet our highest level learner needs, because we could give them some different options as well. And in my experience, that's been some of our richest uses of that time. It's also much more convenient for if people move into our districts, and we have this happen constantly, where people move in and their kids have come from something else. So they might be a 7th grader, but they've already had Spanish 1, and so they need to go accelerate, and we struggle with that. We try and bus them to the high school, or we try to, because we just don't have that flexibility in the schedule. So this allows us to be much more student responsive.
I would add into, just with us diving into being able to offer more elective classes and more options for students. If you're running a newer elective that students don't quite know about yet, and you only have 14 or 15 kids sign up for it, that would be too low for us to run with efficiency that we've been talking about. But if you have 14 or 15 students, and then you also have another 14 students or 15 students in 7th grade, if this is 7th and 8th grade, then you put those students together, and then you have a better class load for to be able to run that class. So that's also the benefit of being able to have multi-grade classes.
I can speak really briefly. In my experience, I have never been in a middle school where 6th grade blends with other grades, but I have with 7th and 8th grade. And I coming from a high school for the last 7 years, so that's the life I'm used to, is multi-grade. And I think, as Ryan shared, there's lots of opportunities, but there's leadership opportunities for students that are at the higher levels supporting younger students, but also just seeing developmentally in a middle school, just the change in critical thinking from 7th to 8th grade and having the ability to be modeled, that I think is really important. And for 7th graders to see that kind of high expectation of learning and thinking, I think there's a lot of opportunity in there, and I think it's something that supports students as they go to the high school, that when they go to the high school, I have a neighbor who he's 9th grade, went into a class with a senior, was like, whoa, there's seniors in my classes. And just having them be a little bit more comfortable with being in classes throughout their day with students that are different ages that are learning the same material and have the same passion as what they do.
Millen,
Oh,
did you have another question?
yes, quick comment, not a question. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to compliment you on selecting the A-B schedule because, as it is, children do not learn much during the summer break, 2.5 months. So I think having that full block of math, science, language arts, and social studies, full block for 2 semesters, I think is very critical, and I appreciate that.
Cheryl.
Thank you again for all of your work on this. Seems like your jobs are going to be a little bit more interesting and challenging because you're constantly like regrouping and assessing, individual needs and things like that. So I think it will deliver lots of great things for our students. Just a simple question. So will teachers on average have to get to know more than the standard 120-ish sort of students that they currently have on their teaming model? Are we going up to teachers needing to build relationships with 180 kids? It's just a question that a lot of people are asking me because that's a little more difficult, and we all agree that the relationships and the experiences is really critical. So I just want to know how you're addressing that.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends upon the content area and how we structure it. Like right now, my FIED teachers, for example, they build relationships with half our building every year. So that's about 360 students. So for some teachers that will go up to 180, some will stay around 120. And that's where we're going to be strategic and get the teacher voice involved and what are the best ways to go about doing that, partnering with other districts and I would say that when we have a team of 120 students, that is incredibly rare. If you look across at middle schools across the area, I would say 180, 200 is much more the norm. So that will be a change. We're going to have to learn and develop skills and strategies to go about that. And I think when we get to the other side of this change, we're going to find that, yep, this is a doable thing. We've got strategies to go about it. We've got the teaming structure in place to make sure no one's falling through the cracks. So I think it will be very successful, though for many of our staff, it will be an increase in the number of students they see and build relationships in a given year. And I think at all 3 of our middle schools, one of our goals around the student experience is that sense of belonging and purposeful community. So those are things that we're going to keep building into our everyday experience for students and be intentional around that.
Any other questions? I also I'm going to build on Cheryl's, and I think you answered it, but one of my questions is we've had a value all along of making sure that every single one of our young people have a connection to an adult that knows them, that connects with them, and that is able to support them. And so whether it's in the teaming and how we're doing in the advisory or, the increased intervention time, can you tell us some ways that you are confident that every student that goes to the middle school in Wayzata will have a connection to a positive adult?
I'll echo what Ryan said. I have absolutely not one concern in my staff at East that they're going to have an ability to connect with each student. I do think that's something because that I would say, I can't speak to the other schools, but I know at East that is our thing, is the student experience. And I think it feels scary right now to think about how this could look and feel different for our staff. I know that we're going to look intentionally at that. Our advisory model is going to remain consistent, and that is a place where every student has that connection, and we're really proud of our social emotional curriculum that we've implemented to ensure that students know they have an adult that cares for them and is their advocate, and so that will remain consistent. I think the teaming is something we're talking a lot about because there is a chance that looks slightly different next year. So we've been talking about, you know, the PLC team and the grade level team and ensuring that our teams continue to meet once a week to talk specifically about students. No matter where that fits in the schedule, we're committed to that. So I'm not concerned about it, but it will feel different, and it will make, you know, 120 team feel a little bit bigger to 180 potentially team. But I do think in our middle school model, we have a lot of different opportunities to make sure we're intentional. And that's one of our primary missions as middle school, is to make sure every student feels a sense of belonging and valued and known and cared for. And so that will be really intentional in the work that we do.
I would say that, you know, just speaking from Central perspective and, you know, what I have confidence in with all 3 middle schools, at Central, we say that every student is central. And that is that we want every student to see themselves as being a central student. And I would say if there's a theme, if there's a word that, you know, our work, you know, revolves around, it's community. And everything that we're talking about is community. The schedule is a big component of building a community within the school. And I would say a lot of the adjustments and the changes that we're making provides for more flexibility. It opens up the doors for more students, more people to be a part of that student's community. My time being a big component of that. Students, every child is different. Every child has different interests. They're going to connect with different people. And what my time provides them an opportunity to do is to connect with individuals even outside of their grade level that in a more traditional model or a different model, if we would be in that, they wouldn't have that opportunity to connect with that adult. And so it brings more champions into the circle for students. And I really, you know, I'm definitely a firm believer in that. And I know that our staff is going to rally around the students, rally around the schedule, and be able to continue to build community for each and every student.
And I think the more possibilities with our encore and elective classes will help kids find kind of their spot in the building, find their passion and explore that. Because that's where a lot of our sense of belonging comes from. Is like, okay, what am I good at? What do I love? And having more opportunities to be a part of those types of activities and build the connections to possible mentors that they really trust and believe in them in those offerings. So I think that really goes to the heart of, as we were designing a middle school schedule structure, is how can we amplify the things that we know help middle school students, those relationships, those connections, that purposeful community. How do we structure for that? And that's where, as we look at all the different models, like this jumps out as the best model for doing that. There's going to be some changes, like change is a hard thing. And I'm really confident in our staff. I know where their hearts lie in connecting with kids. And I know this structure can be really effective in meeting all those needs.
Well, and I want to thank you, and I will just wrap up with, and then when students feel like they belong, they can learn. And I also don't want to lose sight of this model being able to, as we talk about math and we talk about more intervention time, a focus on literacy and more choice. It also sounds like this interweaves an importance and a value on academic rigor and academic achievement. So thank you for that. Okay. So there were no there's no board action related to this agenda item this evening. It was meant to be a continued conversation and a continued learning. I know that each one of you are spending a lot of time helping our community to be continuous learners and to really wrap our head around this. Indeed, change is hard. A schedule of 20 years is a long time. And so thank you for your continued work. Thank you for your continued listening. And thank you for your continued responsiveness.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and moving on to our next agenda item, which is also a non-action item, but information sharing. And related a bit to this is some conversation around school start and end times and a preliminary recommendation for 24-25. So we'll turn it over to Dr. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I appreciate having an opportunity to share a little bit about what I'm calling a preliminary recommendation for school start and end times for effective the 2024-2025 school year. And I'll just read the lead in. Recommended changes to the school start and end times for 24-25 will be forthcoming at a future school board meeting. So as you had indicated, Madam Chair, tonight I won't be looking for a vote on this particular preliminary recommendation. It's being presented to you tonight for your review and feedback. Changing the school start times to the list of times included on this document allows for a number of bullet points. I even thought up of another one here while I've been thinking and listening that I didn't include, but it really helps allow for closer alignment of the instructional minutes across elementary, middle school, and high school. It will increase instructional time for middle school and high school students, and you just heard a presentation, which pretty comprehensive review of thoughts about the component parts of a schedule, not so much curriculum, but some curriculum highlights as well as structural formatting for that particular schedule. And I should have probably made this comment while they were still here, but having spent a little short of a third of my career in middle schools as a teacher and coach and dean and principal and assistant principal. The particular schedule that was outlined, I think, is a really good model. There are a lot of good models, and any of them can be implemented well. It's a matter of determining what are the component parts and what type of program do we have and what's the best way to deliver it. So I really appreciated the focus that they put into that. I would also say, and you heard this from a number of them with that third bullet point that's listed there, that's more flexible scheduling for the three middle schools. And as we continue to explore and consider how to best deliver the academic program for high school as well, it is very flexible and responsive to a variety of different things that can be accomplished or done with that particular schedule. So I think for the middle school component, it will add in greater flexibility and opportunity for teams of teachers to take a look at how the kids are managing and accommodating the day from the start to end times. One thing I thought of that I didn't include as a point here to be made is that if we do have a snowy or icy or bad winter and we have a number of days that we need to not be in school, this does help accommodate in building in more time for secondary. We tend to get into challenges with secondary minutes requirements annually much sooner than we do for elementary. So this would build in some greater flexibility. And that's a result of the actual instructional day or time of student contact time at the buildings for middle school and high school to be extended. And it does not, the recommendations here do not change the elementary start and end times in any of our buildings. So all 9 elementaries with this recommendation or preliminary recommendation would maintain their current start and end times. You'll recall that we had a comprehensive review of school start times, I think back in 2015, and it was the 2016-17 school year when we implemented a whole new package of school start times and made those adjustments. And I think it served the district well. And, it's like anything. You can't find the perfect schedule. You can't find the perfect package of school start times. But I think the ones that we've had have been serving us quite well. So the change would be with the high school and middle schools. At Wayzata High School, you might recall that we went from an 8:20 start time to an 8:15 effective with this year. I think that change has gone fine. There's been a couple of transportation challenges, somewhat related, I understand, to construction occurring that won't always be there, but as we know, they'll move it somewhere else, and some other bus will probably be late as a result. But I think they've accommodated that change really well. So that time has already picked up 5 of the recommended 15 minutes increase. The additional 10 minutes would come at the end of the day for the high school, and they would go from their current 3:10 to 3:20 dismissal time, making the total duration of the start of first period through the end of the fourth block at 7:05, 7 hours and 5 minutes. And then with the, and that's a change from 6 hours and 50 minutes. And then with the middle schools, the recommended start time would be 9:05 with an end time of 4:10, again, picking up that 15 minutes. That would match the total number of instructional minutes for middle school to the high school of 7 hours and 5 minutes. So one of the things that really is important with anything that you do with school start times is to make sure that the transportation department is well versed. They've reviewed this set of times. We would hold on to one of the variables that was really important when we made the change for start times is to not pick up students prior to 7 o'clock a.m. and to do their very best to minimize time on a school bus. Every child and parent wants their child to be the last on and the first off. That's sort of the goal. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it does actually, but sometimes you might be the first one on and the last one off, and they may end up spending a little more time on the buses. But it doesn't take much of a change to really present additional challenges for the transportation system. So that's a starting point for any modifications to school start times. So again, even though it says recommended action, the action for tonight is no action actually, but it's just, it's being presented to you as a preliminary option, and then we'll find a time to bring this back. It is somewhat important and timely to match this up with what we just heard with the middle school, and also as the high school continues to take a look at how to best schedule their academic program there as well. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Madam Chair, for any questions. Maybe I should ask Dr. Flansburgh if there's anything I left off or any points that you were hoping I would make that I didn't with this.
I think you may have mentioned this already, but just to recognize with the middle school start time, even moving up 5 minutes, the bus arrival time, there'd be no departure from what we are experiencing this year currently. That would be eliminated from that passing time in the beginning of the day, and even our principals have kind of talked about, it's okay to get our kids to class maybe a little bit sooner versus hanging out in the hallways as long as they do sometimes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board colleagues, this is a moment for questions. This is simply for discussion. It will come back. Sheila.
I just wanted to say, as the parent of 2 middle schoolers, I think the end time for middle school will feel late. I just want to acknowledge that. I think in the context of the benefits we'll get from, the new schedule, I think it's worth it. I already have to pick, my kids up early sometimes for sporting events. So it's not going to be a huge change if I'm already picking them up early, but it is, I think parents are going to feel it.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Well, thanks for your consideration. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, and we will continue to look at when this will come back. Okay, there's one more item under superintendent or administrative reports and recommendations, and this is related to administrative, to a resolution about election judges. And so Amy Geis, our election coordinator, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Anderson. Before you is a resolution relating to the appointment of election judges for the general election on November 7th. The school board is required to officially appoint qualified individuals to serve as election judges for school district elections. Enclosed is the appropriate resolution relating to the appointment of election judges for the general election on November 7th, 2023. The resolution also reestablishes the payment amounts for the judges. That was already voted on and approved by the board at the last board meeting, but it's reiterated within this resolution.
Okay, thank you so much. Board colleagues, please note that this is a resolution, and the recommended action is to adopt as presented the resolution relating to the appointment of election judges for the general election on November 7th, 2023. Is there a motion to that effect?
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved by Millen, seconded by Sheila. Is there any discussion? Oh, wait, would the maker of the motion like us to read the resolution or waive the reading of the
The
resolution?
reading of the resolution, Madam Chair.
You would like to waive the reading of the resolution. Thank you, and
Second.
all right. So we will waive the reading of the resolution. Now, is there any discussion? Hearing none, it's a roll call vote.
Linda Cohen,
Yes.
Sheila Pryor,
Yes.
Heidi Cater,
Yes.
Bonita Lucky is absent, Cheryl Polzine, yes, Milind Sahoni,
Yes.
and Chair Johansson.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. So now we will move on to audience opportunity to address the board. I would like to say again that this is a time for audience members to address the school board with things that are on their mind. There is no discussion in this portion of the school board meeting, but instead each audience member will be given 3 minutes to share their comments. In our new space, we'll have you come up to the table to address the school board. And if you are interested in addressing the school board and have not filled out a sheet, they are found, I think, out the double doors. So you can certainly go fill that out and then bring it over to Amy Geis. So at this moment, we have one, and it's Rachel Falkowski. Rachel, why don't you come on up?
There we go. All right, good evening. My name is Rachel Falkowski, and I am in my 19th year teaching first grade at Kimberly Lane Elementary School. I also sit on Kimberly Lane's Building Leadership Instructional Team, and I am the equity lead also in my building. I am also a district parent with 2 boys at the high school and 1 at Central Middle School. I'm here tonight to talk to you about Wayzata's high district class sizes and what I fear is becoming a common practice in classroom structuring with lasting negative impact. Wayzata's motto is each and every. Further reading the Wayzata strategic roadmap, Wayzata's vision states that it intends to, quote, create exceptional student learning experiences and relationships. The district strategic road lists strategic direction number 1 as, quote, to ensure a high quality daily experience for each and every student. This year I have 28 first graders in my classroom, as do my colleagues on my first grade team. That's 28 6- and 7-year-olds per classroom with 1 teacher. My 6th grade son at Central Middle School has average class sizes of over 30 students, and my high school sons have upwards of 34 students in some of their classes. As a parent, how can I expect that teachers are able to ensure a high-quality daily experience for even my own children with these high class sizes? How is it possible for me to develop strong relationships with my students when behavior issues and academic needs are only multiplied because of my high numbers? Our district's reading curriculum also is a vital component that includes small reading groups to work with students on specific skills that they need. Best practice is to have no more than 4 groups with 4 to 6 students in each group, meeting with the teacher 2 to 3 times per week for 15 to 20 minutes. The current breakdown of my students and their needs puts me at having 7 reading groups, 2 of which are below grade level. When you look at studies around class sizes and student achievement, every study you find shows a positive correlation between smaller class sizes and increase in student achievement. A notable study called the STAR experiment that tracked over 11,000 students in a 4-year period, data showed that small class sizes led to statistically significant improvements in reading and mathematics, with the greatest benefits for those students that started with small class sizes in kindergarten and first grade. Studies, including this one, also showed that class size reduction narrows the racial achievement gap by about 1/3. Some people argue that teacher effectiveness can simply counter the negative effects of large class sizes, but if you look at studies around class sizes, no other factor has a greater impact on student achievement. Each building and staff in Wayzata set 2 SMART goals each year, an academic goal to close the gap with students of color and a goal around student experience to ensure students feel connected. So it baffles me that we aren't doing more to change the number 1 thing that can easily help us bridge that gap. My fear is that the district is setting a precedence that Wayzata teachers will continue to do what we do and do it well. The eventual fallout, I do believe, will be possible lowering of student achievement, but even more important, students starting to feel disconnected and teachers feeling even more burned out and frustrated. So I'm asking the board to help consider these things when looking at future budgets and the future of Wayzata, its students and staff. I'm also extending an invitation to all the board members, Superintendent Dr. Anderson, Assistant Superintendent, and any other parties that would like to come visit my classroom for an entire morning so you could see what it truly looks like to have 28 6 and 7-year-olds with one teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next speaker is Beverly Shillum. Come on up to the table. Oh, you got it. Just in time.
My name is Beverly Shellum. I'm joined by my husband Keith tonight. We have 2 kids in the Wayzata district, Lane, who's in kindergarten, and Connor, who's in 2nd grade, both at Greenwood Elementary. I'm here today, though, for our son, Connor, who has a genetic condition called Fragile X syndrome and an associated significant intellectual disability. I'd like to bring attention to the board of the impact that recent budget reductions have had on our son, our family, and other special needs families across the district. Connor went from one-on-one paraprofessional support in his kindergarten and 1st grade classroom, about 6 hours per day, to less than 15 minutes of paraprofessional support during the day, now in 2nd grade. Connor's significant needs mean that any minutes during his day outside of direct IEP service minutes are him existing in the classroom. He has gone from squealing with joy to board the bus each morning to screaming, crying, kicking, and throwing his body in protest. We recognize that funding is enormously complex and are grateful to the board for allowing us to speak tonight to help raise awareness and ask for your consideration of these incredibly important resources in our schools during any future budget discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to address the board this evening? Okay. Thank you. For those of you that have come out, someone will be following up with you. Okay, and the next item on our agenda is our Finance and Operations report, and Dee Dee Caring, our Executive Director, Finance and Operations.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Anderson. I have a number of reports to bring to you tonight. First, I just want to review our monthly financial reports. So these are the reports for August 31st, 2023. First, the statement of revenue analysis. It reflects just the month noted as of August 31st, 2023, as I mentioned. These numbers are representative of only the first 2 months of the school year for the months, as I mentioned, of 23-24. State aid revenues are close in line with the prior years, and deviations in revenue from prior years include federal aids and miscellaneous local revenue, which can vary from year to year, and also impacted by the fiscal year 23 accrued revenues. Additionally, in revenue to note is the deviation in community education revenue, which has to do with the timing of revenues being recorded for summer school fees. Moving on to the statement of expenses, again, this analysis reflects the actual expenditures and does not include outstanding encumbrances, with only representing the first 2 months of the year. Overall expenditures are relatively similar to prior years, and salaries and benefits are slightly below prior year's percentages, but will be expected to catch up over the next few pay periods. As it is usually in the case, variations compared to prior years are primarily driven by the timing of payments, timing of projects, timing of purchases of supplies, materials, and capital expenditures, as well as for purchase services. The reports were reviewed at the Finance Committee of the Board, which was held last week. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Board colleagues, no action is required. It's just for your review. Any comments or questions? Okay, no comments or questions.
Thank Thank you. Madam Chair, at this time, I'm going to ask Kristen Tollison to come up forward to talk about the open enrollment. We did have a presentation on this subject at the last work session, went over a few items. Kristen has gone through a number of informational things with you, and tonight we have a resolution for providing open enrollment non-resident agreement for the 24-25 school year. And I'll maybe ask Kristen to give a few comments.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Anderson, good evening. This is an annual process that we go through. It is a time for the school board to review our capacities and other areas that would impact how many students we would like to open enroll and have access our school. We've been closed in most of our grades for many years because of our ongoing growth. We've limited it to the statutory 1%, which means that each year we have about 9 new kindergarten students, give or take. At times, as the class size gets larger, as the students get a little bit older, we may have the opportunity to add 1 more student to have 10 students at any grade. We do have one anomaly, which is at 3rd grade this year. For whatever reason, the students that were open enrolled a few years ago at kindergarten, some have moved into our district and no longer require open enrollment, and others have moved out. So we have a little bit of a blip in the 3rd grade level. So for next year, for 4th graders, we'll be able to accept a small number of students. So I think that the recommendation is to continue to offer 1% open enrollment to our incoming kindergarten classes. The state of Minnesota does allow us or encourage us to prioritize students of staff, as well as existing siblings of existing students. We would continue to do that. We did work with our district lawyer to create some language that allows for some ability for our existing staff and siblings to access open enrollment. Unfortunately, because we are closed at all of our grade levels, except for currently at 3rd, if a blended family becomes, or someone adopts, they are unable to open enroll their students. So we've worked with our district lawyer to write some language that allows for some anomalies or some unique circumstances such as that. And then this year, we are also looking at a proposed 50 new open enrollment spots at the high school at both the 9th and 10th grade levels. Principal Gangler has worked with us, and we've discussed this, and he feels he has the capacity to take those additional 100 students. That would be approximately 50 in 9th graders and 50 10th graders. If we don't get applications, exactly that way, we could approve up to 100. Any other comments you'd like?
No, that's all for the questions or comments that we have, but would make a recommendation to move forward.
Okay, thank you so much, board colleagues. We heard this first presented at our work session earlier, or I guess late last month. I guess that was in September. Any additional comments or questions? Heidi.
Kristen, I have one question on this. Hypothetically speaking, the way that I read it, help me understand, if there was a 5th grader that had open enrolled and then they had a kindergartner coming in, let's say they were at, the 5th grader was at school A, but there's no more capacity left at school A, would that kindergartner go to a separate school than their sibling?
They will be assigned, all open enrolled students are assigned to the elementary school with the greatest capacity, looking at long range as well as the middle schools. At that point, so we would assign all the children to that. And then we do have a typical transfer request process that we have available to all families. We have always highly prioritized having families stay together. So I can't think of a situation where we have not approved an interdistrict transfer for siblings so that they're all in one school.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes.
Board colleagues, I'm sorry, it is not, we have a practice in Wayzata that we get a motion on the table before we have discussion. I didn't break the rules, but I didn't call for the motion, and so we'll keep with practice. So I did not call for that. The recommended action.
I had a question, sorry.
Yep, you're going to get to we're going to put a motion on the table and then we'll
Oh,
resume
yes,
questions
yes.
because that's our typical practice and I'm sorry I overlooked that. So the recommended action, and please note this is a resolution, is to approve the resolution providing for open enrollment for non-resident, for the non-resident agreement for 24-25. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved, and I would request that we waive the reading of the resolution.
I second.
Right, moved by Heidi, seconded by Milland. Now, Milland, your question.
Yes, Kristen, thank you for that information. This might be a good problem to have. What if we encounter a sudden spurt in enrollment in high school within the district? You know that you said the 100
Yep.
open enrollment is capacity
Yeah.
based?
There's additional, even maybe slightly after that, but Principal Gangler indicated that that would be a number that he could accommodate. We have very little movement into our district at the high school level. So many of our families come with us, come from the very elementary level. We always have an uptick after elementary for some of our families that have opted for parochial or non-public. So we will see a bump up at middle school. We will see a slight bump up at the high school, but it's not as significant.
Okay, thank you.
Sheila. Can you help me understand a little more about that we have room at the high school for 100 more students? Because obviously we're concerned about class sizes, and I know bringing these students in will bring in more revenue, and that's part of the reason we're doing it. But again, can you just go into more detail about how they can fit and not make it feel, how do we have room?
Sure. Principal Gangler has been, as Kristen said, been part of the conversation. And if you recall or had a student who's in the high school, you also know that those students have a lot of choices, right? So a lot of students, even though they're enrolled, and say we've got 3,800 students in there, some of those students are doing PSEO, they're doing online classes, they might be part-time, and then they might be doing some classes where they're able to leave school earlier. So even though we might have 3,800 students enrolled, we might not have that, well, we don't have that many students at the same time. So with scheduling and all the other aspects that I just mentioned, Principal Gangler feels that we can make this accommodation.
Would one of our superintendents also, isn't there some benefit to some scheduling efficiencies with more students as we look at evening out class sizes and things? Because sometimes with that choice, some of our class sizes are significantly smaller, so we can balance it out. Is that?
Yeah, maybe to some degree. I would just say at the high school too, there are so many elective options and so many sections of the core classes that there is a greater opportunity to be able to disperse students across the building, I think is probably what you're suggesting. And I would agree with that. I think the rated capacity, and that's sort of a comfort level rated capacity at the high school, is about 3,900 students. So this year we're at about 3,750, I think. Is that about right? What's the total number? You don't have that committed to memory?
3,711.
3,711. So there is some capacity yet within the building, some classrooms that would be made available or are available for expansion of sections. And we should probably mention that it would require some additional staffing, most likely. Were we to realize the full 100 students, we would add some staff to accommodate for that, and the class sizes would probably not be impacted by this particular move because we'd backfill with some additional staff members to accommodate. And you heard the acronym, is that the right term? PSEO? That's post-secondary educational options. So we do have some students that attend class at the University of Minnesota or other higher education organizations. So for the listeners who wondered what PSEO is, that brings or takes some students out of our building during the course of the day as well.
Could I make one other comment? This proposal for the 100 students is for 24-25, not ongoing, because we'd come back again. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear and that was clear to our listening audience as well.
So everything that we're approving tonight with open enrollment is simply effective for 1 year, and this is an annual process.
where we make recommendations every year.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I might just add one additional comment to that. Once we welcome a student in for open enrollment, then they remain with us. So they would be allowed then to continue and finish their senior year at Wayzata High School.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, the recommended action, which came, is to approve the resolution providing for open enrollment of for the open enrollment non-resident agreement for the school year 24-25. This is a resolution, so it's a roll call vote.
Sheila Pryor.
Yes.
Heidi Cater.
Yes.
Lenita Lucky is absent. Cheryl Polzine, yes. Millen Sahoni.
Yes.
Linda Cohen.
Yes.
And Sarah Johansson.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. I was a little nervous for a while. That tech levy, or the screens weren't working, and I think it looks like we have them up. But so I first want to talk a little about our technology levy, and then we're going to watch a video tonight. Some of you may have already seen it, and some in the community have as well. But since you passed a resolution to add a capital project or tech levy to the November 7th ballot, district administration has been meeting regularly to make sure that we are communicating the tech levy as much as possible. So to date, Chase, Nate, Wade, and I have presented a total of to 23 groups, including staff, PTOs, district liaison, and our CFAC committee. We have 13 more scheduled, or more opportunities scheduled to inform the community and staff about the referenda, including a community informational session on October 16th at Central Middle School. In addition, each school in the district has a site team to help spread the word about the tech levy. Tonight we'll present that video that I mentioned that has been shared across the district. So we'll play the video and then I'll make a few more comments.
Hi, I'm Chase Anderson. I'm proud to be superintendent of one of the most highly regarded school districts in the state. Wayzata has a long history of providing excellence for each and every student that makes us a district of choice for families. On November 7th, Wayzata School District residents will be asked to renew one of the district's technology levies. This funding is essential to maintaining our tradition of excellence. We are grateful for the strong community support we have received over the years. Results of a recent survey of Wayzata Public Schools residents indicate broad support for technology and for the district. 86% say technology for students is essential or very important. 97% say our schools are a good value for the investment. 95% rate the quality of our schools as excellent or good. And 92% say the quality of our schools increases home values.
A technology levy, also known as a capital project levy, is a locally approved source of funding. These funds must be dedicated for technology-related needs, including student iPads and staff computers, educational software and interactive classroom equipment, district communication tools and security systems, essential technology training and support for students and staff. The state of Minnesota does not dedicate funds for technology in our schools. Districts must rely on voter-approved levies. Thanks to strong community support, Wayzata Public Schools currently has 2 technology levies in place. One of the district's 2 technology levies is set to expire after taxes payable in 2025. The request is for a 10-year technology levy of $5.7 million per year, beginning with taxes payable in 2026. There is no tax increase if voters approve the levy, because it is a renewal of an existing locally approved levy. The funding is essential to maintaining our tradition of academic excellence.
Technology is essential. It allows students to learn at their own pace and enables teachers to personalize learning for students. Renewing this 10-year technology levy will enable us to replace aging classroom technology equipment and student devices, maintain the technology support that staff and students rely on every day in our schools, and keep students and staff safe through cyber and physical security. In summary, we rely on technology levy funding to provide a personalized education, updated access to educational resources, and expert staff to keep technology current and working for our users. Renewing the technology levy will allow us to replace aging classroom technology equipment and student devices, invest in safety and security, and maintain essential technology support for students and staff. If the levy expires, we cannot replace aging classroom technology equipment and student devices, maintain the current level of technology support for our students and our staff, or keep our data and technology systems safe and secure.
I encourage all residents to learn more about the technology levy renewal and be sure to vote early or on November 7th. We welcome your questions. Please visit our website, send an email, or give us a call.
Thank you. I also wanted to note that the communications department has been working very hard, and they've used a variety of methods to get the word out regarding the technology levy. So that includes updates on the website that was located on the video that we saw, early voting information. You saw the poll booths out here today, and Amy Geis has been leading that process. Tech levy fact sheets. Election day polling locations are listed on our district website. They've been mailing information out to residents through their mailboxes, social media posts, school news articles, a 30-second video in the Around the District newsletter, and then there's also a frequently asked question. Either we've received those through email or when we've been out making presentations, we bring those questions back. So we're getting the word out. We hope more people come in and exercise their right to vote. And with that, Wade is here. Nate and Chase and I and Amy Parnell can answer any questions that you might have. If you have election questions, I'm going to pass it over to Amy Geis. So.
All right, thank you, Dee Dee. Board colleagues, this is just an information sharing. Any questions or comments? I'll just underscore a thanks to each of you, the four of you, for doing all of the trips and the getting to know our community. It's really important work, but it's a lot, and so thank you for getting out. Thank you to our communications team for continuing to do that. Thank you to my board colleagues for helping to pass out tech levy stickers every time someone got a football in or not in the hole at the homecoming carnival. So it was the top prize, better than the fruit snacks. So we are all in it together, and we will continue to hope that our listening public and our viewing public tune in, ask any questions that they need, and help us to support student learning by renewing the levy. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the final agenda item on the board's agenda for my department anyhow is the execution of the purchase agreement for 13305 12th Avenue North in Plymouth. The board did have discussion, went into closed session at the last meeting, came out and approved that the superintendent or myself go have the opportunity to negotiate and sign for a purchase agreement for that particular property. So the property consists of a 31,780 square foot building located at the address I mentioned earlier, and it would become the new district administration offices. The district administration building has been repurposed, as you know, for the Wayzata transition program starting with this fall. And the district's long-term goal has been to find a facility where district leadership team members and administrative staff can be co-located for maximum efficiency and effectiveness, well, with the intention of freeing up space for our students as well. So as you know, we're currently housed in a number of locations, including here, but also Central Middle School, at the Welcome Center, at the second floor of Oakwood. We also have some at the Central Services facility as well. So the board, we determined that the purchase agreement and acquisition of the property would serve our facility needs for years to come and economically advantageous to the taxpayers. So the legal counsel that we've been working with recommends that they authorize the board, the superintendent and myself on behalf of the district to execute all the closing documents related to the property and then approve the resolution ratifying the execution of the purchase agreement as well. That, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Board colleagues, just a reminder, this is a resolution, and the recommended action is to approve the resolution ratifying the executed purchase agreement and authorizing the superintendent and the executive director of finance and operations to execute the closing documents and close the purchase of the property located at 13305 12th Avenue North in Plymouth. Is there a motion to that effect?
I so move and ask that we waive the reading of the resolution, please.
A second.
Moved by Cheryl, seconded by Sheila. Is there any discussion? Millen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. About 2 weeks ago at a special board meeting, I had voted no to approve the resolution authorizing this, the superintendent and or executive director of finance and operations to negotiate and execute a purchase agreement for the purchase of the property. In my statement prior to the vote, I had given reasons to not support the resolutions. Those reasons are still valid. However, at that time, I had also pledged to support the majority decision of my board colleagues. That decision was to approve the resolution. I will therefore support the resolution to authorize the superintendent and or executive director of finance and operations to execute the closing documents and close the purchase of the property. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions or comments? Sheila.
I would just like to say that I think this is responsible use of our funds, that they, again, to reiterate many things we said last time, that the money cannot be used for teachers, and that this is an opportunity that you guys have been waiting for, and it's finally happening, and I think it will be good for the district and good for students. And, in questions that I've asked, there are no unmet needs that this money could be used for right now, that our needs are met in the areas where we could be using this money. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you.
Cheryl.
I would just agree with everything that Sheila said. I think it's an opportunity, and this particular property has things in it that we would most likely have to spend quite a few dollars to try and get technology up and running, and that this is more move-in ready, which saves time and money and headaches, and so that our staff can be focusing on students and the programming. And since this money is in the buckets that cannot be used for staff and teachers and things like that, I think it is a good use of the money, and with this opportunity, I think we should really act on it.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for you to reiterate something that has been said before, but I've noticed that there's some conversation in our community, so I just want to make sure. A couple months ago, we were in this same spot, or not in this spot, but we were talking about a building in Wayzata that the district was going to purchase, and there were maybe some concerns from the community that we're purchasing 2 buildings instead of just 1 building. So can you just remind us what happened, or a Cliff Notes version of what happened, and make sure that we're not purchasing 2?
Certainly. So we had gone through a similar process with a building in Wayzata, as you mentioned, and whenever you enter into a purchase agreement, you have what's called a due diligence period. We had 60 days to do our due diligence on that property. And in looking at that and how that would suit our needs, it was determined that we needed to terminate that agreement. So we did not move forward with that purchase agreement and close that one out. And so any earnest money was returned to us. No other funds were given in that method. Likewise, same thing will happen with this building. We will have our due diligence period before we go into a closing period. This is a much newer building and about 10,000 square feet larger than the other building which was part of the problem with the other building, was it was a little bit too small for all of our staff that would be in administration. So does that help?
That very much helps, yes. I just wanted to clarify. We're
Right.
buying two. We've just purchased one, and we went through normal channels of due diligence and in our process, and that's how we landed
That's correct.
here.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Milland?
I have a clarifying question. So there is also another resolution coming up as far as ratifying the purchase agreement, because I have a question on that as well. Or is that a part of this?
Yes, Milland, the recommended action is to approve the resolution ratifying the executed purchase agreement and authorizing the superintendent and executive director of finance and operations to execute the closing documents and close the purchase of the property located at 13305 12th Avenue North in Plymouth, Minnesota.
And the reason I asked that is because when I saw the agenda this morning, I saw two different resolutions. That's why I asked.
Okay, this is the recommended action that we are
No
voting.
other resolution coming up.
Nope, this is it. There's an attached resolution in the board packet.
So can I ask a question on that purchase
Sure.
agreement? Just for clarification here, I'm not a lawyer, so I did not understand section 1.4. I think that was the charitable contribution part.
Sure.
So we have offered and they have accepted the $7.75 million purchase
correct.
price. And there is apparently somebody else out there that offered $8 million. So the difference is $250,000.
Yes.
So what is this thing about declaring that as a donation? Can you help me understand? So are we telling the seller that you can write off $250,000 as a donation and therefore get a tax break?
So what we can tell them is we will give them a letter indicating that what we're purchasing it for, $250,000 less than what they believe they could get from another buyer. And if you recall in here, I think it also mentioned that the seller needs to get an appraisal of the property as well. So from our point, we're not spending any more additional funds. We did check with the language on this from our attorney, who checked with a charitable donation type of attorney, a tax accountant, on that. And so giving that donation letter is basically saying we recognize that the buyer, or the seller, excuse me, had another offer and or will have an appraisal. It's on their end to prove that this is a charitable donation to the district.
Okay.
We write the agreement. It's not our responsibility to make sure they're in compliance with their taxes.
We won't get in trouble for that, right?
We will not.
Okay.
We will not. We checked on that.
That was my concern. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? The recommended action is to approve the resolution ratifying the executed purchase agreement and authorizing the superintendent and the executive director of finance and operations to execute the closing documents and close the purchase of the property located at 13305 12th Avenue North in Plymouth, Minnesota. It's been moved and seconded. It's now a roll call vote.
Millen Sahoni,
Yes.
Linda Cohen,
Yes.
Sheila Pryor,
Yes.
Heidi Cater,
Yes.
Bonita Lucky is absent, Cheryl Pulsine, yes, and Sarah Johansson.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on in our agenda, we have no other board action this evening, and I am not aware of any board reports. Milland.
Not a board report, but I it's kind of late in the day, almost the end of the day, but I want to recognize that today is Indigenous Peoples Day, which used to be formerly known as Columbus Day. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Milland. Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
I second.
It's been moved by Linda, seconded by Milland. All in favor of adjourning this meeting on Monday, October 9th, 2023, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries, and the meeting is adjourned.